Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, November 12, 2013 Board of Education meeting. The first item on the agenda is to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight is, of course, a very special meeting, an exciting meeting in many respects. We've had two long-serving members of the Board of Education leave the board, not seek re-election. We did also then have two long-serving members of the Board of Education seek re-election successfully, and two new members of the Board of Education. We have the first action item on the agenda is to administer the oath of office to the board members. And we have the very distinct pleasure and honor, really, of Superior Court Judge Jim Kenefick to administer the oath of office to the newly elected board members. Judge Kenefick, of course, was the former chair of the Board of Education for many, many years, and somehow found an appointment as a Superior Court judge was a more attractive position than continuing to serve as the Board of Education, but he has served both the town of Guilford with great distinction on the Board of Education for 20 years, and also the people of the state of Connecticut for many, many years now as a very respected Superior Court judge. So I would ask first, Dr. Chris Moore was re-elected. I'd ask Dr. Moore if you would please go over to the podium, and Judge Kenefick will administer the oath.
Hey, Chris, why don't you come out in front here? Get you on the camera there.
It's been 4 years.
All right, raise your right hand. You, Christopher Moore, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut, so long as you continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge, according to law, the duties of the office of Board of Education member to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I will.
Congratulations.
Dr. Alan Myers is not able to be here this evening. Judge Kenefick will administer the oath of office to him at some other time.
I'll call him tomorrow and make arrangements to do that.
Very well. I'd ask Amy Sullivan, please, to come forward.
Raise your right hand. Do you, Amy Sullivan, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut, so long as you continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge, according to law, the duties of the office of Board of Education member to the best of your abilities, so help you God? Congratulations.
And then third member is Mr. Ted Sands.
Raise your right hand. Do you, Theodore Sands, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut, so long as you continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge, according to law, the duties of the office of Board of Education member to the best of your ability, so help you God? Congratulations.
Judge Kenefick, thank you so much.
I'm
sorry. You got reelected. I'm sorry about that. Sue Renner. You've just been always here. I forgot that you...
Just raise your right hand. Do you, Susan Renner, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut, so long as you continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge, according to law, the duties of the office of Board of Education member to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations. I do wish all the newly elected and the former members that are continuing good luck. I served 20 years on this board, and it was a wonderful experience, a lot of hard work. You do a good job. thought 20 years was a long time, but now Keith has outdone me by a couple of years, so I think he did 22 years.
Well, you can come back, you know.
I'll have to get off the Superior Court before I do that. Good luck to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I just, for some, I even voted for you. I should have. Do any of the people that were just elected or re-elected want to make any comments at this point? Dr. Moore?
I, just obviously like to thank the voters for coming out. It's a good turnout. And I think really we have a great board. It's always partisan around election time in certain areas, but once we all get on the board, I think it's a great team to work with, and I'm really looking forward to all the newly elected members as well as those that are returning.
I want to thank everyone who supported me along the campaign and voted for me. I'm very excited for the next 4 years, and I will do my best for the town of Guilford.
Mr. Sands?
I also want to thank everybody who supported me. I'm proud to be associated with an excellent educational institution like this, and I'll try my best to continue the excellence.
Ms. Wren?
And it's a privilege to serve on this board with such wonderful people, and we have a lot of work to do.
So let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
All right, the next, I should say, is there a motion? We need to add a student report. We, for some reason, in putting together the agenda, forgot to add that. So can we add that as item 9 on the agenda and then renumber everything else below that? Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 4 on the agenda is election of officers. The way this works is we have to do this by paper ballot, and I think everybody has ballots in front of them. So the first item is if there's a motion to elect a chair.
I make a motion that we elect the chair by ballot.
I think the rule is under Roberts, there has to be a name.
And I further move that be William Bluff.
Okay. Other nominations, other motions? Actually, you don't need a motion on an election of an officer, but any other motions? All right, then if you would please fill out your ballot.
Quite sure what purpose the written ballot is serving when
It's a public document.
motion is out loud.
Because state law says that we have to do it by paper ballot, so that's why.
I think
So
they're
you
going
pass
to
it
you,
down to
right?
Dr. Freeman. I think we can trust him.
Shall I tally the votes?
But you've only got some of
There's
that.
some late reporting
Oh,
precincts. And just in anticipation of moving this along, is there a nomination for the position of vice chair?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Alan Myers.
Okay, are there any other nominations, motions? All right, if you would please vote.
Holding it.
And is there a motion for the position of secretary?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Susan Renner for secretary.
Any other motions? All right, I'd ask you to please fill out the ballot for that position. Okay. The West Coast hasn't closed yet, apparently. On the assumption, Dr. Freeman, that the votes have gone roughly according to...
Having tabulated and certified the votes, I'm happy to congratulate Mr. Bloss and Dr. Myers and Mrs. Renner on their election to the office of physician.
Terrific. I look forward to working with all of you, and hopefully we can continue the momentum. And And Dr. Myers, I know, expressed his regret at not being able to be here tonight. He was just getting back from being out of state, actually out of the country, I suppose, but he will be here at the next meeting. So then, item 5 on the agenda is to take action on the minutes of October 15, 2013, and the workshop meeting of October 28. Is there a motion that we approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and abstentions. Ms. Sullivan, Mr. Sands, you obviously weren't on the board at the time, so okay,
I would as well.
great. Mr. Kazin, you have the expenditures for the month of October.
I do. We are off to a fiscally uneventful start to the year, which is good news. The expenditures for October were $4,439,000, and roughly within 0.6%, the same amount of the budget, 23.85% of the budget compared to last year. Salaries, employee benefits, purchase services, tuition, all approximate last year's expenditures on those items. Transportation is a little bit lower than last year, and that's the result of the use of fuel that was remaining from the contract for the 2012 and 13 fiscal year. And finally, we went through the individual payments listed in the warrant. The total warrant is $2,083,070. And again, we discussed all these items at a bit more length in the Finance Committee earlier. That's my report.
Okay, and is that a motion that we approve the expenditures for the month?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, any discussion, questions? We did go through this in substantial detail in the Finance Committee meeting. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7 on the agenda is public forum for topics on the board agenda. Does anybody have any comments on items on the board agenda? All right. Item 8 is communications. Anybody have any communications that would not be part of some other communication, some other presentation? Yes.
Just one, I had some back and forth with Dr. Freeman and Dr. Keene on this, and at some point, hopefully, we could maybe have a larger discussion about it. It was really about resources for the middle grade math curriculum in terms of what textbook, if any, we're using, and there were some questions about that. And I dug into it a bit deeper, and I think we're continuing to look into that a little bit, and it may come up as far as future decisions. I don't know if you have any comments on that communication, but that was one that was...
It may come up during budget preparation, because obviously, because in terms of what resources may or may not be used, replacing existing materials.
Sure. We are in the process of reviewing materials around particularly mathematics as we move into the new curriculum that this board approved last year. And so there were some resources that were included as part of that document, but we recognize there's a greater need. We've had a conversation about how we're pursuing those. We don't have a recommendation of any resource at this time. We've also been pursuing other ancillary resources that could be and can be provided to parents, in fact. So there's a communication being prepared now that will be coming out in the next few days that will include recommended resources for parents. And at the elementary schools this week, as teachers are meeting with parents, they are recommending some resources for parents at the elementary level to help as we go through this transition. We're not abandoning textbooks, but it is a transitional period, and we just know that we need to provide some support to families as they move forward, and we're working as quickly as we can to provide the resources to the teachers in the classrooms.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Item 9 on the agenda is the added item, student representatives. So if you would tell us what's going on from your perspective.
All right, I'll kick it off. Well, fall sports are wrapping up. Winter sports are starting soon. And to say we had a successful fall sports season would be an understatement. The girls' soccer team won the SEC championship against Brantford. And now, to even add on to that success, they're going to go for the state championship on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So they're in the state championship. And if you guys win, that's the first time in a long time. So, also on that field, hockey went deep into the SEC playoffs as well as the state playoffs. The football team has won the Division II West Championship, first time outright ever. So that's a new milestone we achieved. And the second thing I'd like to touch on in the high school is Unity Week. And this is put on by the Unity Club, and it's basically just where this group tries to unite the high school a little bit and get everyone a little closer and highlight some issues that we have to address going forward. And some of the things they did to achieve this was they had spirit days where you wore different things that they assigned you to, like they'd have a khaki day, or a tie-dye day, or a favorite color day. And then we also had a mural put up downstairs in the cafeteria that said, "Together we are limitless." And every student had the opportunity to sign a brick on one of the walls in the cafeteria. And a lot of kids, thankfully, took advantage of that. And another one, the biggest one I think, is we had the Delete It program, which what it was is they gave us the opportunity to set up computers downstairs to go on social media, and you were actually able to delete any rude or snide comments that you had on any social media that you ever regretted saying. So a lot of kids did take up that opportunity as well, which is a good thing.
To add on to what Fred was saying about Unity Week, we also had an assembly on the last day of the week where we all gathered at the end of the period of the last period of the day, and we just had students talking to us about it, performing, singing, playing instruments. But Mr. Masenti called our attention to our 4 best buddies, who are Carl Velasca, Lee Owens, Alex Beckett, and Anders Collerson. And these 4 boys set an example for us students and teenagers to strive to be like him. And they say nothing mean or insulting, and they just greet us with smiles, high fives, and laughs. And also, we had a homecoming dance this past weekend, which was a great success.
As far as academics, we just finished up our first quarter, so report cards are coming out Friday. And the seniors are all still in the midst of the college process. Most of the early deadlines have passed, but regular decision deadlines will be coming up in early January. And there's a lot going on with performing arts as well. Our theater arts just put on their annual cabaret, and we had a full house for each of the 2 nights. They have a fall play coming up, Almost Maine, and that will be in the JHS auditorium as well. And for music, we have the CMEA Southern Region High School Festival auditions this Saturday, the 16th. So that's another big thing.
And then also, I spoke with Mr. Augustine, the principal of A.W. Cox, and he let me know that their students are still working on their personal narratives and memoirs and having much growth in them. And the students also got to meet with an author, and she discussed the process of getting published. They also had a very successful fall harvest festival, where several teachers and him ended up in the dunk tank. And also this week there's parent-teacher conferences taking place, which will result in students getting a half day. And he also warned me of their Circle of Friends, which is now a new all-school assembly where teachers put on performances for students. For example, last week they sang the song Respect. And he also let me know that the new windows are installed and they love the sunshine, and they're receiving screens and shades soon.
Anything else?
Thank you very much.
The high school, the girls' soccer game, is that Saturday or is it, Saturday? In Meriden,
Saturday.
is it? Where is it?
Gabby, you want to?
The location and time haven't been announced yet, but we're thinking it will be a central location in the state, so Hartford area probably, but we're not sure.
All right, so we'll put out, somebody will put out word on that.
Absolutely.
You know, you mentioned social media. I wonder if any of you saw the article that was published last week in the New York Times about how college admissions offices are now looking at social media to see what their applicants are saying about each other and about themselves, et cetera. Do people understand that, you think, in your school?
I hope so. We hope so.
I think most kids do. There are privacy settings and other things that kids are taking precautions now.
Of course, the best remedy for that is to not say anything stupid in the first place, but privacy setting notwithstanding. But, yeah.
The Delete It program that Freddie touched on started with an advisory meeting in the morning. So in small groups, students all throughout the school got to sit with an adult and talk about the things you say that you always wished you could take back, or the things that you've put online that you wish you could take back. And then after those advisory meetings, the stations were made available to students during the lunch breaks, and students were encouraged to go back and look at those places that you can delete some things. And you will notice in rooms throughout the building a deleted envelope where students all reflected on the things they wish they could take back. And one of those envelopes has been posted in each of the spaces where students meet with advisors throughout the building. So it was something that was connected to the new advisory program, as well as something just to be part of Unity Week.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Before Dr. Freeman starts his report, we have a list for the disbursement review to review the expenses coming up, and I'm just going to pass this around, and if you can just take a month, I'm going to suggest that the new members kind of take one toward the end, because it'll give you a little time to see, see the process and so forth. So if you can just fill that out and pass it to. Well, please come up here, Mr. Messeni. Please, come up here to the microphone.
Well, first of all, this is our co-captain of the girls' soccer team.
Okay.
And so they play for the state championship Saturday. They've had a great year. But she's a great leader both in and outside the classroom, and I think she demonstrates that each month. And she flies under the radar every single day here. And it's just wonderful to see her really lead this team to a whole different level. And I just couldn't let her walk away tonight without the board knowing that the co-captain of this championship team was sitting right here.
Well, terrific.
Excellent. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere.
All right, item 9 on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Yes, and in fact, I'd like to invite Mr. Messenti to join us at the podium or at the table again. In our last meeting, there was a question about the Interact Club and what the Interact Club does for us here at the high school. I knew that I would not be able to answer that as well as Mr. Messenti, and so I've asked him to respond to that question this week.
Yeah, the Interact Club is sponsored by the Rotary Club of Guilford, and Al Jacobs, who's a member of the Rotary Club, is really one of the co-advisors with Laura Samperi, one of our guidance counselors. So I just thought I'd give you a flavor of some of the activities that they conduct over the school year. There's nearly 100 students that participate in Interact. The club has raised more than $8,000 over the past year. And here are some of the things they do in our community. They participate in a number of events that are held at Bishop's, where they volunteer in parking. And Bishop's does a nice job of donating back to Rotary and to Interact monies that help finance worldwide projects. And one of these worldwide projects was a biosand filter in India, where they were able to build that with some of their donation monies to purify water. And they're working on a second village as well in India to do the same in the near future. Recently, we had Pasta Night, and the kids assist Rotary in raising funds at Pasta Night, and all of that money goes to the food bank. They also work at the homeless shelter at the Columbus House, where they actually serve and cook meals for them. They've assisted Rotary on the Frosty 5 and Lobster Fest, and Rotary in turn donates money to the club that they use for good things in our community. They've participated in Read to Grow, where they over 1,000 books were collected by the club and donated to the program. They've also participated and assisted with Sarah's second time around prom dress sale, where over $10,000 was raised for it. They have participated in a build, Habitat for Humanity in New Haven. They also participate in a number of local meetings and statewide meetings that Rotary sponsors with them. And finally, they actually sponsor with Rotary what they call the Crybaby Scramble. It's an annual golf event here in Guilford, raises more than $5,000. And again, all of that money goes into projects both local and worldwide to help the needy. It's a great club.
I would have said they're a service club at the high school. Mr. Messenti did a much better job than I did.
Thank you very much, Mr. Messeni. That sounds like an outstanding group.
And this board approved a donation from that group at your last meeting. I'd also like to invite Mr. Gurnham to come join us at the podium. Mr. Gurnham is going to present the annual facilities report for 12-13 to the board.
Good evening to everyone, and welcome back to many of the returning Board of Ed members, and welcome to the new Board of Ed members that were elected this year. I'd like to start Briefly with the high school, we didn't do too much work here, but we did take the time to relocate the ropes course this summer, which gave way to the beginning of the construction for the new school, and that went quite well. From our office, we can see that being used on a regular basis and hear the screams out the windows as the kids try each event, and it's quite interesting to watch. So if you have the time to come up during class one time, I recommend watching it. It's very interesting. Moving on to Adams Middle School, we did extensive amount of work over there, working on the heating and cooling system in the south end of the building. We replaced the main ventilation system, which included all the new ductwork, electrical, and rooftop units. We replaced it with a high-efficiency two-part system. One does the heating and cooling, and one does fresh air, which is a dedicated outside air system. And again, we did that to improve efficiency within the building and get better energy savings. We also did renovations to a classroom in the basement, B5, which has had extensive issues and concerns with water infiltration. So we did quite a bit of renovation work down there, removing walls, moving sinks, and doing water mitigation throughout that area. So it received new cabinets, some new flooring, and it looked almost like a whole new classroom when we were done. It worked out quite well. So on the exterior of the building, we spent about 3 weeks removing bricks and replacing mortar, as well as expansion joints. That project was a little more extensive than we originally thought, but again, something that most people won't see driving by, but it will prolong the life of that building and help with water infiltration as well. So that's worked out quite well. Moving on to Cox Elementary School, another one of our the largest project that we ran this summer, in the range of almost $1 million. Unfortunately, the project is not complete, although we'd like it to be, it's not. But as you heard, the new windows, operational windows, are all in, so the kids now can view what's going on outside and have some daylight again. We are a little behind schedule due to a delay in receiving some new doors that we're waiting on. Unfortunately, not too long ago, we had to make a modification in the doors. We found out that the doors that were ordered were not appropriate, and the doors we wanted are essentially a higher security door. So we made that change to ensure that we had the best high security doors going back in place. So we expect those now in January, so we've delayed that project slightly. So most likely the two main window walls that we have on the two ends of the building will be delayed being installed until April at this point. So we also did extensive flooring replacement throughout the building, including areas, the hallways, the media center or library, multiple classrooms, 6 or 7 classrooms, as well as the teachers' lounge and the computer room. Those all received new carpet, and along with that, we also purchased a new piece of equipment to help us maintain that carpet so that we can prolong the life of that investment. So again, take a walk through that building. You'll see it looks really, really great down there, and the principal's quite happy with that project. Moving on to Melissa Jones, we spent time renovating 8 restrooms, lavatories up there. 4 of them were staff labs, and the other 4 were student labs. So those we tried to focus on the high occupancy or high use areas, so the main corridors, and those came out great. But the floors were done. We put new tile walls, new partitions, painted, upgraded some lighting, again, so they really look spectacular. In the district, we spent a little time repairing curbs with the help of our town resources. They came out and were able to repair quite an extensive amount of curbing over at Baldwin, which was damaged during our major snowstorm last year, and we also did some work here at the high school as well. So we also put on our summer seminar, which refreshed all our annual certifications including our lift certification for the maintenance guys and the custodial staff to operate that equipment. For the upcoming year, we do have an extensive list of other projects that we want to keep moving forward on. We have security upgrades that we're looking at Adams, Baldwin, Calvin Leet, Guilford Lakes, and Melissa Jones. And we're presently working on hiring a architectural and engineering company to come in and start those designs. So we look forward to working with that. We also are looking at another major project at Adams for replacement of a large portion of windows and doors. Some of you may recall that, I think it was 2009, we did windows in the 1936 building, but it was only the windows, there was no doors, and it was only that area specific to the 1936 section of the building. So now we're going to be moving on to other areas of the building that require the additional upgrades to the windows and doors. We also have a fuel oil tank replacement project that's underway that we're in the process of getting through planning and zoning. That's going to be down at the bus yard to upgrade their 2,000-gallon fuel oil tank with a 10,000-gallon fuel oil tank, which will better serve, obviously, our transportation, as well as provide them with the ability to fuel multiple buses at once. Right now, they have the limitations and get backed up because they can only fuel one bus at a time. So we're redesigning it slightly to accommodate that, to make the facility more user-friendly. The last project I want to touch on is a lighting project that we're looking at doing. Again, this should be starting up shortly. We covered this at the most recent facility subcommittee meeting, and they recommended us moving forward. And what we're looking at doing is renovations to lighting in 6 of our buildings. Obviously, we're excluding the high school because of the duration that we'll still have this building. But when we're done with that project, we should be looking at a savings of about $61,000 a year with our budget once we pay off the project itself, which is about 3.5 years. So the only other thing I want to touch on that is probably some great news. We're looking at closing 3 bond allocations through the town, which is exciting because with closing those, we're actually not bonding $1.3 million. So although we had requested the additional $1.3 when we did the projects, those projects came in under budget for one reason or another. 2 major projects were roofing projects. Both of them were bonded at the height of the construction. So we had obviously, I don't want to say over budget, but we were budgeting appropriate for that point in time before the construction and the economy crashed there. So it's great news that we won't be bonding that. So when I come back again this year and I'm requesting additional funds for other projects, just keep that in mind. Can I answer any questions about any of that?
I'm sure the board will have questions, but before we do that, I just want to commend Mr. Gurnham and remind this board that the significant amount of work that was achieved this summer was achieved in what was, I believe, historically the shortest summer we have ever had, at a time that he was coordinating with the high school building project as well. So while Mr. Gurnham may not be directly responsible for the construction of the new high school, it does take a significant amount of his time, and what was achieved this summer deserves recognition and thanks, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions before you leave? Questions? Yes.
But also a comment, just as we're at the turnover of the board, I want to kind of acknowledge some of the progress that was made over the last 4 years. And actually, John Ireland was really instrumental to a lot of that. He chaired the facilities subcommittee where a lot of the stuff gets done that you don't see on TV, but his expertise was very much welcomed in that. And I think we made a lot of progress. I know you've been working harder than you were probably the last 4 years before that. But we're actually to a point where I feel like, number one, the important parts of the buildings, the envelopes, are in fairly good shape, and that's where you really run into issues with maintenance longer term. With the new high school, the energy efficiency is going to be higher. We're looking at energy efficiency on all those areas. We've moved more of the expenditures on a yearly basis into the operating budget, which should decrease our bonding over time. So I think we're just making a lot of progress. We have the facilities condition assessment, which there's going to be a presentation on, and that's helping us with the long-term planning for how we're going to do expenditures. So I just think we've made a lot of progress in the last 4 years, but many thanks to Cliff and also some of the other people have been working behind the scenes. So thank you.
Questions, thoughts, comments? I think, yeah, no, it's a very comprehensive report. Appreciate it. And on behalf of the board, thank you for all the progress you made over the summer. I know it was a very short summer. I also know that Mr. Augustine and the faculty and students at Cox are very happy to have windows. It's very energy efficient to have no windows, but it probably isn't the ideal learning community, but thanks. So, I did notice, by the way, they were there late putting the windows in the evenings. They were there, I think I saw them on weekends fairly often. So it was just a complicated job and without a lot of time during the summer. So anyway, thanks.
Welcome. Thank you, Cliff.
Thanks. Thank you.
Moving on, I also just want to remind the board that with the completion of 2 budget sessions recently, one where this board met with the leadership team and one where we most recently held the first hearing on the budget process, we now move seriously into the budget season as we move forward. For the community's benefit, I would simply note that this board held a public hearing. A number of people came out to comment on their desires for the budget moving forward, and I think that the meeting could best be summarized by saying there was significant conversation around the idea of a full-day kindergarten, which is being explored as part of this budget process, and an initial recommendation will be discussed in more detail with the first draft of the administrative budget as we compile that. We begin meetings with the administrative team individually, with building principals and with department heads in the next couple of weeks. We'll be going through each of those site-based budgets and pulling that together into our first budget presentation for this board.
And one of the things the board asked coming out of that and the meeting with the administrators was to get some research on the educational benefits of all-day kindergarten, specifically in demographic towns similar to ours. And I know that we did get last week a very lengthy series of links to items, reports, studies, and so I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to look at that. And any questions that people have, please just let Dr. Freeman know, and we can try to address this. I think you should know thematically the other item that was discussed by some number of people at the public meeting was the issue of high achieving learners. I know that's the next agenda item, so you may be talking about that then, but I did just want to note that that was a second very frequently cited topic.
Right, including 2 notes from individuals who weren't able to attend the hearing but asked me to bring their concerns forward. Yes, absolutely. Moving into that, what I do want to apprise the board is that we continue. There were some adjustments that were put into place as we opened the school year this year around that particular population of students, particularly around how we refer, monitor, identify, and plan for and communicate around students who are either academically gifted in the traditional sense or simply achieving very well. And so we've launched that new paperwork and that new process in each of our schools, K through 8, with the opening of this school year. Additionally, what we continue to work on most immediately is the idea of bringing somebody in from the outside who can look at what we do, how we support the needs of that student group, and give us critical objective feedback and possibly recommendations for how we can improve that service moving forward. The analogy has been drawn to the special education audit that we had conducted. I updated the board most recently that we had some phone conversations planned with organizations who felt that they could move in that direction. We have at this time received a formal proposal from the District Management Council, a group who is out of Cambridge and was previously affiliated with Yale. We had a
Have
link-
or have not? I'm sorry.
Harvard, I apologize.
You have received one, or you?
We have received their proposal, and we're holding that as we continue to try to develop other proposals from other organizations. We spoke with Gene Gubbins, who works with Joe Renzulli in Yukon. We had a lengthy conversation with Gene about putting a proposal together, and she has asked if she could come spend some time with us and see what we're doing currently before working on that proposal. So Gene Gubbins will be joining us Thursday of this week. We'll be taking her to 3 locations in the district, and then Dr. Keene and I will be spending some time with her, answering her questions, helping her to flesh out her understanding of what we do currently, and she will provide us with a proposal. And we are currently continuing to track down some connections that we have in the University of Pittsburgh and at the University of William and Mary, where we want to see if there are folks there who could advise or put together proposals as well. Having some idea of what these groups can put together, I'm currently working with a suggestion that was made by members of this board to then pull together a small focus group or a group that could sort of look at those 4 proposals, help us get an idea of what types of support these organizations could provide for us, and then we could go back to those organizations, either sharpening our question, refining, issuing a formal bid, or seeing that we like something that is on that table and bringing it forward to this board for a formal proposal. There's clearly going to be cost associated with something like this. It is not something, and some of the comments that were made at the public hearing were requests from community members to please budget in this budget cycle for this sort of support to be delivered next year. While there is a cost associated with this work, and it will be an unbudgeted cost, we intend to launch into this work this year. We know that we will be able to find the funds to do this work within the existing budget year. We do not intend to do this work and then only enter into this contract as we move into the next school year. This is work that we expect to do during this school year and have that information moving forward to help us to continue to refine what we do and how we support students who are really achieving at the highest levels. That's only slightly advanced from when I last updated the board on this topic, but we do continue to work at it.
Well, having a proposal is a step in the right direction, right? Last time we weren't even sure what a proposal might look like, right?
Exactly. We've spent at this time about 90 minutes with the District Management Council in conversation that generated the proposal. I think we spent about 2 hours with representatives from the Connecticut Coalition for the Gifted, looking at how they might be able to support this work. I think we've spent approximately an hour with Jean Gubbins to date, and we'll be spending about half a day with her on Thursday when she comes in to visit, and again are continuing to pursue other resources, William and Mary and the University of Pittsburgh, but don't have anything concrete to report. All of this is really sort of, I think, necessary because this isn't an off-the-shelf service like a special education evaluation. And so rather than simply calling these folks and asking for a talented and gifted eval, we're trying to spend the time up front to help them understand that what we're really looking for is a systemic study of how do we meet the needs of these students from the core curriculum through modifications, curricular compaction, acceleration, how we meet their needs, and looking at it systemically. And so I think we've spoken to some very bright people. I'm impressed with what they're bringing to the table so far, and I think that this outside, objective, critical look is only going to help us be better at the work that we do. I'm sorry, that's for Bill Paul.
Sure. No, I mean, I think those are great steps. Number one, acknowledging the need and looking into it, and the fact that we could get it into this budget cycle, I think, puts us ahead of the game for what we need to be thinking about in terms of resources and things. I guess the thing that I'm wondering about is just as far as the process. I mean, it's certainly worthwhile to see what's out there, but it doesn't seem to me like it's too early to get a committee together to really define what we're looking for rather than let somebody else define that. In other words, maybe now is the time to try to draw in people from the community or within the district to really have some conversations and outline exactly what we want rather than having somebody else dictate what that is. I know it's a bit of, trying to figure out what's out there and then trying to outline it, but it seems to me like in a normal process, you try to figure out what you want and, outline maybe the ideal, and then figure out what reality is. And it seems like maybe the time is now to do that, to try to get that committee together.
I appreciate that. I think my goal was to try to have something for that sort of focus group to look at and to compare. Again, I don't know that it is a normal process. I don't know that there's a lot of people that do this work, or at least not in any sort of commonly prepackaged way. So we wanted to, internally, from the administrative perspective, know who we were sort of talking to, know who we were inviting in, and have some samples, some pieces that folks could look at, rather than just, we had a public forum, which is different than a focus group meeting. But I think that there's a lot of people with a lot of ideas, and that public forum went on for about 3.5 hours. So I was trying to narrow this down a little bit before bringing that kind of comment in. But I
totally agree with narrowing it down in terms of figuring out and really writing down exactly what we want. But I think that's something that the community and the board would like to see. I think that can precede getting too far along with the actual negotiations with who might do the evaluations. And maybe I'm the only person who sees it that way.
I think there's an intermediate step, as I understand what you're saying. Before we get to the negotiation phase, there's going to be a what are we negotiating about phase, and that's what this focus, or you call it a focus group. Would that include either a board member or two, and or a member of the community or two? And
sure, I was thinking about bringing in some of the administrative team, a board member or two, and some of the community members who have been sort of really involved in bringing this conversation forward. And then having stirred up what I think is out there and available, bringing those folks in to say, so we were able to shake out 4 proposals from 4 different organizations. Is there a way that we can find components that we like and maybe cobble together something? All of these groups know that we'll be coming back to them. So it's not simply a sort of a formal bid where they're going to hit it or not and we're going to move on. They've all been told we're sort of feeling our way through this, and could you put something together as a starting point? Could we then bring it together in front of sort of this mixed, constituent group, and then we'll come back to you. And people may come back and say, we really like A, but they didn't have that one thing in D that we really liked. Isn't there a way that we could pull these sort of things together? I just thought that having drafts in front of us would give us something more concrete and more immediate. I think now the conversation is sort of broad and nebulous, and I think different people are coming at this conversation from different angles. I think that a number of people are coming in, and some folks are thinking at the higher level, and they're thinking about our older students, and we are working on raising the bar at the high school, and we're going to be talking with this board soon about an international baccalaureate program, which really raises the idea of rigor at the high school level. I think other people are thinking about their 2nd and 3rd graders, and some folks are really keyed into math at the middle level, and so I wanted to just have some drafts on the table to give us a place to start. It's not to say that the point's not well taken and that I can look to speed the process up or build a couple meetings, an intermediate
I'm not saying
meeting.
that those are bad steps at all. It just seems to me that it's not too early to form that committee, because the earlier that they're involved in potentially seeking out people that might be available, if you're already that far into the process and somebody says, oh, what about this person here, this person there that you didn't talk to and you didn't consider, then at least you have an answer for that, and it doesn't set you back in terms of waiting for them to give you something if they're a viable candidate. So it just seems to me it's not too early to form that committee.
No, I agree. I also want to caution that I'm not really thinking of this as any sort of formal committee. We didn't have a formal committee around special ed. I'm thinking of it as a broadly based constituent sounding board, so that I can go and have some sort of open conversations, but I'm really not thinking of it as a formal committee structure that we're pulling together, but a sounding board, a place where I can bring in some people who are invested in this conversation from different sides and bounce some ideas around. And again, point well taken. I don't think that I need to continue waiting to pull a group like that together.
Fair enough.
Well, let's just, let's see where it shakes out, I think, unless anybody has any different thoughts. It sounds like progress is being made, so
I'm very excited about Thursday. Thursday is going to be, I think, an engaging and rigorous and productive day.
Okay, and so we'll just keep this on our agenda to kind of get a report from you moving forward, and hopefully we can come to some decision on one of these entities in relatively short order.
And that completes my report for the evening.
Okay. All right, item 10 on the agenda is, 10.1 is, first of all, there are a couple of personnel items. One is to ratify a resignation of Amy Bradley. Speaking of all-day kindergarten, it was somebody who spoke at the public session, but she is resigning as a kindergarten teacher at Jones and Lakes after 7 years of service, effective November 27. Is there a motion to ratify her resignation?
So moved.
Second?
And Dr. Freeman, it's a little unusual that we have a kindergarten teacher leaving in the middle of the year. Can you just comment on, within the limits of what you can do, why, and what arrangements have you made to cover?
I don't think Mrs. Bradley would have a problem with me sharing that she is relocating with her family. It was unexpected. She has served us well for 7 years. She has spoken before this board on more than one occasion, and she will be missed. There are substitutes in place in the 2 kindergarten sessions, one morning and one afternoon, that she currently serves, and the principals involved have posted the position, advertised the position, and are beginning the process of hiring a permanent replacement.
Okay. So there's a motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then there are 2 appointments. One is Karen Russo, a mathematics teacher at the high school with 5 years of experience, and James Holleran, a mathematics teacher at Baldwin with 6 years of experience. Both, I guess they're already on board, it looks like, given their effective dates. Is there a motion to ratify their appointments?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And does that mean that other than this kindergarten position, we are hired up at this point in
We are
certified staff?
filled in all certified positions, I believe, with the exception of the new kindergarten vacancy. I'm just looking to my left to get a nod on that.
Mr. Bowden's thinking about that.
Sure. I mentioned to the board during finance that there may need to be an additional special education position posted. That is not that we are vacant in any positions at this time. It's that we have a growing need and may need to cover that need by bringing a position in to cover that need.
And was that an unanticipated need, or?
It's an unanticipated need. The changes in special education that we see annually as students may move into town or may have new needs identified. I think what is different than what we may have brought before the board in the past is that, again, we're continuing wherever appropriate to try to meet those needs by building our local ability to serve those kids rather than simply finding a program where we could tuition those students out. And so we're going to continue to build the in-house services, and we will possibly have to come before this board with a more specific notice about a new position that needs to be filled.
Okay. All right, the next 3 items are relating to bids. Ms. Renner, you were running the Finance Committee meeting. Can you present those?
Certainly. The first is a bid for custodial supplies, which Mrs. Trudeau explained. We bid each particular supply item separately. And so vendors will bid on just one item or just a couple of items. And if I understand correctly, the Finance Office would like our authorization to award the low bid as the bids come in and are organized in each of the areas to whoever the low bid is.
All right, so that's a motion that we approve the custodial supplies bid for 2013-14 pursuant to the exhibit. Right? Okay, second?
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 10.3 is a John Deere mower.
It's a mower. It's a great big mower.
What can you tell us about this?
I can tell nothing about it, but I know
Where's
Lindsay
Keith?
can explain it.
Let's see, it's in the document here.
Pieces of equipment, the bid comes in at $31,981.14. The low bidder was
New England Power.
Power Equipment. And the funds for this are budgeted in the new equipment account for the facilities department.
except for one of the additional pieces, which will come out of the ground maintenance operating budget. So we're asking for your approval for New England Power Equipment, $31,981.14 for the diesel mower.
Okay. So that is the low bidder.
Yes, that's
Okay.
a little bit.
All right, is there a motion to approve that bid?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Any discussion, questions? You know, I know that, Dr. Freeman, you've been working with the town to try to figure out, you know, overlaps and potential efficiencies with the town, particularly with respect to things like this. Is this going to be duplicative of the town in any way, or is this something that is going to be usable regardless of who's doing the work?
Yeah, I think it would be usable regardless. So while we are looking into those arrangements, this is an item that would have resale value. Cliff has been requesting this item in his budget presentations since I came to the district. It is budgeted for this year. We would like to go forward, and if it turns out that we end up renegotiating our own groundskeeping, either with the town or with an outside contracted entity, I'm not afraid that this item wouldn't have use in the town or resale value elsewhere, so I'm not worried about expending the funds. It is needed at this time.
Do you mind explaining that just in terms of renegotiation? So right now, the fields are mowed by...
Sure. Right now, the fields are maintained by the community, by the town through Park and Rec. We have responsibility for groundskeeping for everything that lies between the buildings and where the fields begin, and it is a significant amount of ground.
That's what this would generally be for?
Yes, that's what this would be for. So it would be parking lot islands, lawns, recess spaces, anything that isn't an athletic field would be maintained by us. I did mention in one of our earlier budget meeting that we're looking to things like snow removal, groundskeeping, and weighing whether or not it is most cost-effective to continue to do that work in-house ourselves or to look at contracting that work out. This one is a little more complicated in that we already have some sort of relationship for groundskeeping, and so whether we talk with the town about absorbing it or look to contract it out in the way that we're looking to contract out snow removal, it's a cost-value analysis that we want to do. We are further along with snow removal, so I'm not sure if we'll be prepared even in this budget cycle to make that presentation to this board, but it's something that we're beginning to look towards. We're using the same logic as we look towards a lot of our electronic services. Should we continue to run an in-house local mail server for email, or should we shift that responsibility out to the cloud so that our local resources can get closer to our core mission of teaching and learning and not managing a mail server? Same logic applies. We will have recommendations of that ilk in this budget, but I don't know if we'll specifically have one around groundskeeping or whether it might be limited just to snow. Again, it's something that we have needed for a long time. We are evolving our thinking around it, but I'm not concerned about expending the funds. It's a piece of machinery that is beyond its usable life and does need to be replaced, at least in the short run, and I'm sure this has resale value if we end up not needing it.
Where does that come from in the budget?
It is either going to come from an equipment line within Mr. Gurnham's area, or it may be coming from a groundskeeping line. That question was asked earlier. Mrs. Trudeau and I both apologize, but off the top of our head, we can't remember which line it is from. We will respond to that question.
It's actually in this budget.
It is budgeted in this year's budget, yes. It passed through the budget process last year and is
So this isn't a surprise?
No, not at all. In fact, we've squeaked at least 2 years out of this machine that we didn't expect we would get. We held off on this, but did budget it in this year's budget.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded, I think. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And then 10.4 is a drum set.
A drum set for Guilford High School, yes. There were 6 bids submitted with a large price range from $8,700 at the low end up to $12,007 approximately. And it was determined that the lowest bid did not meet the bid requirements. And so skipping over that one, we've been asked to approve the second lowest bid, which appears to meet all the requirements in terms of specifications, delivery, setup, acceptance, and all that. And the amount, Linda, for that?
The amount is $9,899.77, and the vendor is Music and Arts Corporation.
Also budgeted in this year's budget, and the bid comes in just slightly under the dollar value that we budgeted for.
This one big drum set?
several?
It's several drums, yeah, it's sort of it's a timpani.
Yeah.
Okay.
Four drums in the set in varying sizes.
Okay.
Okay, I know this was talked about at the Finance Committee meeting as well. So is there a motion then that we accept that bid? Well, the name of the company, I'm sorry, is
Music and Arts Corporation.
Music and Arts Corporation, the bid of Music and Arts Corporation for
So
the
moved.
high school timpani. It's moved and second.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thrilled, we have new timpani. Item 10.5 on the agenda is to receive for possible action the ratification of a new contract with the Guilford Education Association, which is, of course, the teachers, the certified teaching staff. I want to, first of all, note that I had almost no participation in the negotiations. I'm truly sorry to say, because I was stuck in Los Angeles for a great length of the last 9 months or 6 months. But I know the members of the committee that were negotiating that with the teachers really worked very, very hard and very ably we did the interest-based bargaining again with Joe Dubin of the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service until he got sequestered or whatever, not the shutdown.
He was shut down.
He was with us until the end, and then when we actually got to the finish line, he was not there because he had been barred from working thanks to the...
Or even responding to our emails.
He did or he didn't?
He could not respond to our emails.
Seriously?
No. Yes, his account was locked. He could not answer his emails.
Wow, that's great. That's a terrific way to run a government. But I certainly want to highlight, I know Mr. Kazin did a lot of work, and want to just acknowledge his efforts in that respect. Dr. Myers was very involved. Several board members were very involved, but it was like Ms. Renner was heavily involved. It's like every negotiation. It is a lot of effort. It's a very productive process. I think we are really committed to this process in terms of trying to do it in a different way than being trying to walk the line between being. We don't want to be adversarial. On the other hand, we don't just want to say, "Okay, fine, whatever you want." That's neither of those is a really good way to run a district. But what we've tried to do with the interest-based bargaining is we've tried to just sit around at a table and say, look, here's what we think the issues are. And it's very productive on some of the language issues that we were able to address in this proposed contract. I will, I think, summarize what the numbers are, and then if people have other comments or questions, we can talk about that. There are two different components of the contract. One relates to raises for teachers at the top step, which is roughly a third of our certified teaching staff. Those are people that have been with the district for some substantial number of years. It depends on where they are in the step process, but somewhere probably in the area of 15 or 14 or 16 years, something like that, which is one of the problems, frankly, that we've been able to iron out in this contract. How to get to top step. But for teachers that are top step, the increase is 1.5% a year over the 3 years of, or 1.5% a year for each of the 3 years of the proposed contract. The second component of the contract increases are what are called step increases, or what we think of as longevity increases from being with the district for an extra year. There is I guess you'd call it not a longevity pay, but pay for additional experience. That, in other words, people are moving up the steps at an annual rate. And the step increase for 2014-15 is 2.4%, and for 15-16 is 2.41%. The total for the 3 years put together, counting the at-max increase or the increase for teachers at maximum, and the step increases is 3.06% in the first year, 2.89% in the second year, 2.60% in the third year. The total for salary change over the 3 years of the contract would be 8.55%. Now, there's a lot of other things that I'll touch on. But I do want to say at this point that just want to remind people about the process that we're all negotiating in. Teachers don't have the right to strike in Connecticut. But what they have and what we have in exchange for that is we have the binding arbitration system that really puts a very narrow set of bookends on what the possible result of a negotiation for teacher contracts can be. There is no chance of getting repeated 0% increases. There is no chance of getting repeated 6% increases annually. The arbitrators are mandated by state law to choose what they believe is the last most reasonable offer from one party or another. They are precluded from deciding somewhere in the middle. So it sets up a system that really encourages both sides to be realistic, but also to not take extreme positions. That if we went in and said, look, we want to freeze your pay for 3 years, there would be no chance of that happening. Nor, by the way, would that be good management on our perspective either. I should say that, and I said at the hearing the other day, the budget hearing, that, and I believe this, that the teachers right now are working harder every day than any time that I can remember in the time I've been on the board. And it's partly Common Core, and it's partly the new evaluations, it's partly a different set of expectations, it's an increased set of expectations, I think, on the part of the community. I have at least one teacher, my girls, who is, and I'm not corresponding with her, I just don't think that's a good idea, but she is responding to emails at times of night that I think are, they're past the times I respond to emails from clients, let's put it that way. So I am absolutely convinced that we have higher expectations of them, and they are actually they're meeting those expectations. And so from a point of view of trying to encourage the kind of behavior we want to encourage, we wouldn't want to take an unreasonable position. So given what our expectations are as a district, and given the realities of the binding arbitration process, I think that the negotiating committee believed that this was a proposal that was not only in the district's interest financially, but also in the district's interest in terms of trying to encourage and attract and retain qualified and exemplary teachers. It does compare very. We did have data from other districts. There are a couple of districts in our demographic group that one came in at 8.6, one came in at 8.5. We're in the middle of those two. There are some others. I think the committee believes that we are very, very much in a good place compared to other districts that are coming in, and that this proposal would, if we went to arbitration, could it be a little bit less? Maybe. Could it be a little bit more? Yeah. So we're pretty comfortable that I think the committee believed that this was a good place. There would be some changes in stipends for extra work like coaching and club management and so forth, 3% a year. Not much money, frankly. We did agree that we were going to do some more extended studying of that, but they're not paid very much for the extra activities.
Not compared to their counterparts regionally. No.
Right. Well, we'll find out. We'll get some more data on that. The employment year, for people that are in an instructional coaching or curriculum specialist, we've agreed that up to 10 work days can be scheduled flexibly. In other words, before the school year, probably before the school year starts, so you can plan and work with them, and rather than having, say, an instructional coach work the week before Christmas when maybe, there's not quite as intense atmosphere within the buildings.
Absolutely.
So they've agreed to that. We have agreed to guarantee 100 hours or 100 minutes of preparation time weekly at the elementary schools, just to clarify some language in the existing contract. But one of the things we've heard over and over and over again is teachers believe, and this is exacerbated by Common Core, teachers really want more time to prepare. And we're going to try to meet that request as best we can, particularly in the elementary schools, which is where the need seems to be. There's some teaching assignment language. There's some language relating to leave, bereavement leave, extended leaves, but also we continue our efforts to work on the insurance benefits, or or technically non-insurance, but we're self-funded, but health benefits costs, that the premium cost share would be 19% for the typical plan in 14-15, going up to 20%, and then in the third year of the contract, 20.5%. That obviously has never been higher in the history of the district, but it is something that the teachers understand, that that healthcare is a very expensive commodity, and they will be paying for over a fifth of just the premium cost, plus co-pays, which would also go up as set forth. We're going to agree to do a recommendation or explore the possibility of a leadership academy. We did talk about that 3 years ago, and just because of the change in administration, we just didn't get around to addressing that. But those are kind of the highlights, if you will, of the agreement. And I think the committee was very grateful for the cooperation. Well, first of all, the intervention of Mr. Dubin from the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, but also the attitude and the approach of the teachers, who really were very cooperative. And they made their positions known. It was not, I think Mr. Kazin will agree that this was not the easiest negotiation either of us have been involved in. From the point of view, they had some very strong issues, and we thought we did too. And the good news is we were able to resolve it without the expense of an arbitration and without if you can say, the messiness of an arbitration. You see this in other worlds where to go to a binding arbitration, you sometimes have to take a position that you might not really want to take with the people that you're asking to do really great work for you. So I think we're all very pleased that we were able to do this and are very comfortable with the numbers. And do you want to add anything on?
I think the interest-based bargaining does a terrific job of having it be a collaborative experience. But the universe we're working in is very finite. The numbers can only go so far, and the outcome is known well to both sides in the ranges that you spoke about, Mr. Bloss. So on the one hand, it enables us to work together towards a result, but on the other hand, if we step outside of the system, we know the result can only go as low as X, as high as X, and so that too brings us back together to just plain work it out, which we did. And there were moments we went into separate rooms at least, and our interests were based in different geographical areas of the building for a period of time, but then we came back and put it together. I think it was terrific.
Do you have any observations? You participated very heavily.
I did. Yeah, I think the process was, I think, very respectful to both sides. And I think that when a contract is renegotiated, it's normal to focus on the changes, but it's also important to kind of take a step back and look and see what you have. And frankly, I think in our previous contract with the salary schedule, the way it evolved, that's a good example of something that grows through change and suddenly might not be exactly what you want it to be. But I think taking a step back and looking at the new contract, I think it puts us in a good place. I think it shows our professionals the respect they deserve, because we do ask a lot of them. It's reasonable compared to other towns in our DERG and other towns geographically close to us. I just think it leaves us in a really good spot. And we did manage to smooth out that salary schedule in the final year of the contract. In the previous negotiation, when I participated there, we talked about doing it, and we all kind of decided it's just not possible. But we did it this time, and I think that's a great progress.
I think it was a very collaborative we all worked together, good dialogue between both sides, everybody, but I was very proud of the outcome. I think everybody, there was a lot of good give and take and good discussions. So it was an excellent process we went through. I think we can be proud of the contract that we came out with.
All right, is there a motion that we approve the contract as recommended by the negotiating committee?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, any other questions, discussion?
I just ask, as a matter of process, we're receiving this really for the first time in the full form. Is there time critical to approve it. I just...
Yes, it is, as a matter of fact, because we're actually quite late. If we don't ratify it tonight or approve it tonight, then we are technically in the binding arbitration process. So the
That's fair
deadline...
enough. I guess if we have these, I'd prefer to receive them earlier.
Well, we did have executive sessions after, I think, each of the last 6 meetings of the Board of Ed where the details of these...
No, I'm familiar with that. Just in general, if it's received for action, I'd prefer to get it before we take action, but that's fine.
Okay, well, I think...
I agree in general.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's why I'm asking.
We went very late. Actually, we're technically, I think we were in the mediation process, weren't we, and with the State Department of Education, and we agreed that Mr. Dubin would be our mediator. And so had we not reached an agreement at that time, we would have been into the binding arbitration. We would have had to have named an arbitrator. They would have had to have named an arbitrator. They would have had to have appointed a neutral. And, you know.
We settled in mediation, yes.
Yeah. So, but that's fair, but the language is predominantly based on the language in the existing contract. So, any other comments? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? You want to abstain? Okay. All right. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now, and we are, I guess we should just say we're, and I should say that first of all, the teachers union has ratified this. And I have Ms. Sullivan's signature here on the contract, and we are still in the process of negotiating with the administrators. And
yes.
So we can't talk about that publicly any further, but hopefully that will go reasonably as well. Next item on the agenda is 10.6 is to receive for possible action 2014 meeting calendar. That is an exhibit, 10.6. That would include both the regular meetings and the workshop meetings. Obviously, we don't have to adopt this tonight. I think it's going to go completely according to the same process that we've followed for the last 1,000 years.
Yes.
So
There's no reason not to adopt it
So
because
is that a
it's been
motion?
that way for quite a while.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
All right, that's what I thought. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now, the next one, though, I'd like to suggest that maybe we don't take action on this one. I know Dr. Myers in particular, and several other members have talked about what we're going to do for committees at this point moving forward. And I think that we should just maybe put that on the agenda for the December meeting to first of all talk about committees. And actually, maybe we want to put that on the agenda for the workshop meeting later this month.
That's a good idea.
And so we don't go too far into the year.
Sure.
But then we can work on a calendar at the December meeting, full board meeting, I think. Okay? Does that seem reasonable?
That's fine.
I may need to bump an item from, we did want to speak with the board about international baccalaureate programs in November, and there was one other shorter item, but I'll touch base with you, Mr. Bloss, and
We'll figure it out.
we can finalize that.
Yeah, that's fine.
We generally don't want to have 3 or 4 items on a workshop schedule,
Correct.
so we can finalize that agenda.
10.8 is to act on a resolution regarding an update to the 457 deferred compensation plan, I assume. Who's going to talk about that?
That was actually tabled at the
We
Finance Committee.
decided in the Finance Committee to table that.
All right.
The Finance Committee has no recommendation on that. We'll bring that back.
Sounds good to me. So 10.9, should that be on the next month's agenda?
Yes, we'll have that prepared for you for next month's agenda.
All right, 10.9 is a series of recommendations from the policy committee. Do you want to talk about these?
Well, the first one, physical restraint and seclusion, is a redo of our old policy that was called physical force. We reviewed the policy, and it had not been updated since 1998. We made some changes with the input of Mrs. Brown, the Director of Pupil Services, and we also reviewed sample policies from other schools and several other policies that we could relate to. And we looked at it last month, and now I'm asking you to approve both the physical restraint and seclusion policy as well as the regulation that goes with it.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Okay, the motion's been made, second?
Second.
Okay. Questions about this one? This would be item 10.9.1 and 10.9.2, the regulation.
Correct.
Correct.
All right. All in favor? Okay, I'm sorry.
Vote. No, I'm done.
Okay.
That one.
You can talk about it if you want.
No.
Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So then we go to 10.9.3, which is a new policy 6336 on dissection of animals.
This was a policy that came about because of a new law that was passed and went into effect July 1st of this year. So we reviewed some K sample policies. This policy excuses any student from participating or observing animal dissections as part of classroom instruction if the student's parents or guardian has requested such a move in writing. And that's basically what it's asking.
Okay. All mandated by state law.
All, yes.
Okay. Is there a motion that we approve that policy?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I think the next 5 items are removing policies relating to items that are covered in bargaining unit contracts. Is that essentially where?
6.
Well, 6 is
Mr.
summer
Bilal.
school. That's not under a contract.
No, that has a different reason. Okay. We're going to remove the next 5 because they were found other places. They don't need to be in our policy book. They're already stated in contracts that
Or state labor law.
Or in state labor.
or in state law.
All right, so is that a motion that we approve the removal of the policies 4234, regulation 4234, policy 4236, policy 4238, and regulation 4238? Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, I guess I should mention that. And then 10.9.9 is removal of 6430, the summer school policy. Who knew we even had a summer school policy?
Which we don't have a
Which we-
summer school, but we did have a policy, so we are going to remove it.
The reason being we don't have summer school.
Right.
Yeah. When did we ever have summer school?
Oh, yes.
When did we have summer school?
Recently.
It was several years ago. We had a summer program. Well, we have summer programs now. One for Title I provides a reading camp, and we also have extended school year for special needs students. But we used to have a summer school program that was for pay. It was like an enrichment, and then it was also credit recovery at the high school. But it really it was not cost effective. We were actually losing money. And it turned out the last couple of years we were actually serving more kids from other school districts than from Guilford. For example, from Branford or from Madison or from Haddon-Killingworth that were looking for credit recovery. So it really wasn't, we weren't cost efficient, and now there are so many other avenues for students to get credit recovery, whether it's online courses or other kinds of programs. It really doesn't, it isn't the best use of our energy and time to have this kind of program.
Okay, so is there a motion that we remove 6430?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, any discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, terrific, very good. Finishes the board agenda. 11 is unfinished business. Is there anything? All right, committee reports, 12, policy committee. Do you have anything other than what we just did?
Nope.
All right, facilities committee, 12.2. Do you want to talk about what's going on with the, maybe, and also the high school building committee?
Sure. There's not a lot to report at this point. The Facilities Committee is really focusing on the needs assessment survey. We're going to have a presentation of the needs assessment. We're bringing representatives of the Standing Building Committee and board together for that formal presentation of that work that we did. At the Building Committee, surprisingly, work continues. We're monitoring foundation work. We intend to see steel begin to go up in the month of December, but there's little to report at this time. They're monitoring the early stages of construction, monitoring the budget closely. The black box continues to be something where decision points are being carefully watched, and I believe I informed the board at our last meeting that the building committee is watching a timeline for decision points that would be important if we choose to move forward with the black box, and at the same time monitoring the expenditure of the reserve account. And by monitoring those two, at a certain point, there will become a drop-dead date where we need to make a decision to expend funds and move forward, or to stop the consideration of the black box as part of this project. And they're watching both of those timelines, and they continue to monitor that. They are meeting in this building tonight because we had a conflict with our Monday, Tuesday sharing of this space, but they're meeting downstairs in the learning lab at this time.
So as I understand it, regarding the black box, the decision at this time is whether to expend a smaller amount of money that would allow us to proceed with the project should we decide that it's within the budget at a later time.
Yes, the first decision point would be whether or not to expend money to authorize the architects to design and engineer that space, which would then allow us to have a firm pricing of that done. And so, you know, the decision process there would be, if we were in deficit, if there was no reserve account, it wouldn't make sense to expend the architectural fees knowing that we wouldn't have the ability to build that. So the first decision the committee will have to make is, will construction be viable? Should we expend some amount of money to design, engineer, and cost this so that we could then make a larger and, no pun intended, more concrete decision at a later date when we're ready to make that decision? They have not made that yet, but that decision point will fall within the next couple of months. We will need to decide to get started or not, I think, within this calendar year. So that is a point that will be reached sooner rather than later.
I guess, I mean, one of the things is, I guess, the liaison to the GHS Building Committee is now off the board, so we should consider that. But I guess I would just respectfully ask, since you're probably most closely involved with the GHSBC, is just communication about that with the board, because it was part of the original educational specifications, and I think it fits with, you know, our educational goals, that we be informed, in particular, if there's some decision that may be coming up that would, you know, prevent us from doing that in the future. I understand that they have to be very cognizant of the budget and that we can't commit to it until we're sure that we have the budget, but I would just ask that communication be kept open on that with the board.
Sure. I'll be happy to facilitate that.
Yeah, we will, obviously, we've got to make appointments to the committees and committee liaisons, so I think what I'll do is I'll send an email around, and just if you have a preferred landing place, you know, let me know, and we'll try to work that out. Finance committee, is there anything other than what we talked about?
No, covered it.
Okay. And town committee liaisons, I think the only one that we ever get a report from is Mr. Bishop on land acquisition, and since he's not here, we're obviously going to end the meeting early.
Just for my own, refreshing my memory, and for the new members, that how many liaisons we have, or at least prior with John, we
Standing
had
Fields, land acquisition, the high school building committee. Am I missing something? I think that's, I want to say that's it, but don't hold me to it.
And there's the health.
Learn, and the wellness committee?
The Wellness Committee, right.
Right. So,
Is that it?
What's the authority for that? Is that just what we decide makes sense, basically, or is that?
well, I think Learn, we have asked, they ask us for a representative. The Fields Committee is a town committee, and I think that they've asked us to provide a representative. I know Land Acquisition is a town committee, and I know they've asked us for a representative. The Wellness Committee is a schools thing.
School committee mandated, yes, mandated school committee.
What did I miss?
Learn.
That's done
Oh,
by
you
Learn.
mentioned that.
They ask for a representative. So I think this is all, it's not something we've asked necessarily to do.
Standing building committee.
Oh, the Standing Building.
Standing Building Committee, we have a representative. That's true, absolutely correct. But that is clearly a town committee, but they have asked for a board representative. So, Okay. Well, the renumbered item 14, but it says 13, is public questions. Anybody have any questions or comments that they want to make? Please.
Good evening. Margaret Molnar-Ryan at 63 Decatur Avenue. Dr. Freeman, you put my letter into the public forum that you had on October 30th. Thank you. There are new board members, so I wanted to take this moment just to reread my letter. And I wanted to take this opportunity to voice my support for the inclusion of a full-day kindergarten program in the Guilford Public School 2014-2015 budget. In the past several years, the administration and the board have done much for the schools of Guilford. Thank you. Efforts have included the implementation of the state requirement of the Common Core standards and new teacher and administrator evaluation systems, developing a special education capacity in town, as well as response to doing more for those high-achieving students. The new high school has broken ground with provisions not only for its students, but for the town residents as well. Even with all these accomplishments, we still cannot rest. Now we must turn our attention and resources to the youngest in our town. Currently, kindergarten in Guilford is academically crammed and rushed 2.25 hours. The teachers and the students do not stop. There is no recess. There is no downtime. We are asking our 4- and 5-year-olds to multitask, having a snack and reading a book just to get it all in. It is even more concerning now with the more rigorous Common Core standards and the smarter balanced assessment that we try to cram, jam, and stuff even more into them. They, like all of us, need time to process information, figure out what they like, and work on what they don't understand. Teachers need the time to be able to give the attention to the students. All of the surrounding towns now have full-day kindergarten. 80% of the state's schools have full-day kindergarten, and more than half of the towns in our DRGB now have full-day kindergarten. Are these the reasons Guilford should have it? Some may say yes, some may say no. The 2011 Grade 4 CMT results indicated that the 4th graders in Guilford were slightly below the DRGB average in performance for math, reading, and writing. The 2013 State of the School report does not mention the Grade 4 CMT results, and I am assuming that they are similar for the 2012 test. Will this achievement gap get wider with the difference in kindergarten day between Guilford and other towns and schools? This is not an area we should gamble on. Past discussion with the BOE meetings has not been whether to move forward with full-day kindergarten, but when to move forward with kindergarten, and that answer is now. When families are looking to move into the area, the quality of a school system is often weighed very heavily in making the decision. This decision can have an impact on the economics and social aspects of the town. I am not an educator, but hearing not one but many teachers voice their concerns and speak in favor of the change to full-day kindergarten says a lot. When you start a building, you begin with the foundation. You make it strong to withstand all that comes. Let's do the same for our children's education. Let's give them the time to enjoy learning. Let's give them the opportunity to read and write, play and eat together, dance and sing, and begin to love learning. Let's give them full-day kindergarten. As a mother, town resident, and architect, I would like to offer my time, talents, and experience to assist in any way possible and wish to be part of the continuing discussion. Thank you for this opportunity to continue the dialogue, and let's remember, we all need to know, all we need to know, we learned in kindergarten.
Thank you.
Additionally, you had asked for questions, and I guess I wanted to know when the first draft of the budget is presented to the BOE typically?
You've got the date,
Calendar in front of us, I believe that takes place in January.
I think it's the first week in January. It comes to us. We then have some discussion of it at our January meeting. Then we have 2 public hearings on the proposed budget as presented by the administration at the end of January.
28th and 29th,
Okay,
I think.
great. Well, it's on our calendar that we just adopted.
Could I just ask this follow-up? And this was also on the superintendent's report, but at the district leadership team meeting, there were some preliminary figures presented that it was emphasized they were very preliminary. And I understand we may not have sort of final figures until we get into the nitty-gritty of the budget, but
27th.
since it's such a big portion of what we're considering this year, I'm wondering if we can get, a closer handle on those, what we're talking about in terms of numbers.
I mean, I guess I defer to you on that, but my perception is that was so preliminary that I'm not sure that I'd even want to even offer those as alternatives. We don't do that with any other place in the budget. I mean, I know last time we looked at it, we thought that it was a couple of years ago, it was probably in the 700,000 area, roughly. But, I'd be, I don't know, I mean, unless you feel compelled to offer any alternatives.
One way to think about it is that we are a 13-year school program, and right now we only offer half of one of those years. And so, you're looking at 1/13 of the total work that we do in the school system. It's a whole grade level that we'd be talking about. So it is a significant figure. We haven't even begun the meetings with the individual building and departments yet. So there's staffing concerns that go into that. That's the primary concern, obviously. That's the most significant cost associated with that. We're just beginning to vet those numbers now. And ultimately, until the actual individuals are hired, we wouldn't have a real cost. Even with vetting those figures, we will only have placeholders for the staffing figures until real people get hired and we shake out what the actual salary and benefit costs are. That's going to be impacted by years of experience and by benefit need for those individuals, which you can't look into prior to the hire. You only learn after the hire has been made. So certainly we'll sharpen the pencil. Certainly we'll have a better figure as we move forward. We can update through the Finance Committee as we do that work. It's certainly appropriate as we're doing our internal work to keep the board apprised of that work through Finance Committee meetings. But I would hesitate to share any figure from within that whole budget publicly until the whole draft is done. Even when we present to you in January, there are still figures that are going to be placeholders. It's often in January we don't have final figures for insurance yet. There's a lot of figures that go in as budgetary placeholders. Sometimes between our initial presentation to you in January and the final adoption from the board, you learn about staffing changes, you learn about contracts that finalize. But I would be happy to keep the numbers conversation going through Finance Committee meetings, which are public meetings, in fact. They're just not full board meetings. I'd be cautious about getting too many figures out piecemeal before the whole draft is completed.
And then there would be some savings. I know we've talked about this, that there would be, I guess, one fewer bus runs or some number of fewer buses. So that's something that would have to be calculated, and we've asked you to look at that.
Right. There'd be places where we would be able to generate efficiencies, transportation being the primary one. We would not be running a standalone bus run in the middle of the school day anymore.
Well, and the good news is that one of the issues that I know we've talked about in the past is that do we have the physical space, and at least what you're telling us is that it looks like the physical space is not an issue, because one of the things that I think we were very, very reluctant to do was to commit to it and then say, oh, by the way, we need to come back to the town now and get $10 million to add on to get more classroom space or portables or something else. Right. That would be a really unfortunate situation. So we think we're okay on that.
No portables, no construction, and in fact, no large-scale renovation needed to achieve this.
And I understand the issue with the personnel. I guess one of the major parts of the preliminary numbers that were presented was, how many actual teachers and then how many paraprofessionals are in each classroom. And, think about that. It just makes it as such a big part of the future considerations. Whether we're talking about $500,000 or $1 million is, a substantial difference.
Sure. And the presentation that you received was coming directly from the building level principals, and so our 4 building level principals collaborated and brought that together. that presentation has not gone through the crucible of central office yet. And so those were staffing levels that are being requested by the building level principals, and those staffing levels aren't always honored. It's a good place to start, and I honor and I respect the work that they have put into that, but there's now the district-wide perspective that will be applied to that. And, you know, I have not delved deeply into that schedule or proposal yet to see if there are things in that proposal that would be good to have, but that we're not financially prepared to be able to provide at this time. And so there will be some close looks. There will be some intensive dialogue about a number of components. I also want to point out that the schedule presented was the principal's proposal for what a full-day schedule could look like, and I appreciate the work that they've put into that. But again, we haven't looked at in the curriculum office, we haven't thought instructionally, so that is, at this time, a building principal's presentation, not a district presentation of what full-day kindergarten could or should or may look like in this school district next year or the year after.
Okay. All right, good. Do you have other thoughts?
The only other question I asked,
we
and
kept
I
you
don't
up there
expect an
while
answer. It's nice to have the discussion. The only other question I have is that in some form, I'd like to request, can in some form, whatever the cost of full-day kindergarten would be, whether it's 100,000 or 100 million, can that somehow at least be brought to the voters to get?
I think that we've actually talked about that in the past, and my recollection is, I'll talk to Mr. Hoy, the Board of Finance Chair, I think that we have to present a unified budget, a Board of Education budget, except as to capital items, which are going to be some capital items that are bonded, which are the subject of a separate vote. That's my recollection, is that we cannot present alternatives to the voters, but I'll talk to the Board of Finance.
If you could take a look at that, at least to get some kind of feedback from the town overall.
That's
As to whether or not they would want to, spend whatever that money is and include it as a value to the town.
Yeah, I've just got to look at that. I know we've
Thank you.
talked about that in the past, but thank you.
Mr. Boss, if I can just say that, so those two meetings are Monday, January 27th and Tuesday, January 28th.
Yes.
Public forum on the budget.
And that's at the Adams Chorus Room, and the budget will then be posted on our website, and will be basically as soon as we get it. Your proposal will be posted on the website, so people will have an adequate opportunity to look at it. And I think traditionally you do a 4 or 5 page highlight, executive summary, if you will. Yes. And the question, I'm sure that it'll be very clear and easy to see what your highlight recommendations are in that respect.
So the initial public hearing was a public hearing without any document to comment on, but for the community to express to the board their desires. These meetings are substantially different in that there will be a published budget on which the community can comment, and they can comment on things that they feel are missing, things that they feel shouldn't be in the budget. And yes, I will do an executive summary that will highlight significant changes, significant expenses, and hopefully significant efficiencies in this budget, so that people can have a context and how they think about that budget.
Okay. Any other public questions or comments? All right. New business, which we should never do unless the absence of emergency. Certainly never without adding to the agenda, but anyway. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.